Hi, my friends. A massive warm welcome to the Narcissistic Abuse and Trauma Recovery podcast. One of the things that I wanted to talk about really in this episode was friendships. Friendships, particularly female friendships, bizarrely having an ex who is a narcissist. I tended to focus only on romantic relationships then around healing from narcissistic abuse. But when I actually split up from my ex-husband, I had a very close female friend. There was a group of 4 of us actually that hung around together. Our kids went to the same school. I'd always been quite tentative in female friendships growing up, because I always felt like at some stage, and I didn't know the reason why at this stage, it's still part of my healing journey then, I felt like I was giving so much. And at some stage, I felt like, I don't really want to swear, to be fair, because I don't really normal to, but it felt like they were dumping on me a lot of the time in the end. And that wasn't just by obviously sharing things and looking out for each other. It actually felt like at some stage, they would gossip about me. They would say mean things about me. I sound like I'm back at school, don't I, by saying things like that? But that's how it felt. It felt like, oh my God, I'm giving you so much. But it felt like it was never quite enough. And I never realized actually, and this is why I always say, narcissistic abuse can be like an alarm clock. It can really wake you up from things that maybe you didn't realize and you were just living through your life like this as well. But actually they are like, ding, 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 wake up, wake up. And it allows you an opportunity to really kind of question and look back at all of your previous relationships as well. So when I split up from my ex-husband, we had this group of 4. And, 2 of them were kind of like, they were the closest friends, and me and this other girl, we were kind of the closest friends as well. And when we split up, you can imagine, I was deeply traumatized. I was on my own. I've got my 2 kids. I was finding out all about our finances and being in over 70K debt. And all of these realizations were coming to me. Now, initially, my ex-husband, who left me, by the way, it wasn't me that left him. It was him that left me. He found supply with somebody else. But when he actually left, his response to leaving, again, and some of you won't be surprised at this, his response to leaving was, Caroline, I can't carry on making you this unhappy. So I'm so altruistic. He didn't say altruistic, but hey, I'm going to leave you so you can go off now and be happy. Now, of course, when he was doing that, I was initially, up until that point, was always living on eggshells that he was going to leave. But I remember on this particular day when he actually said he was going to work early and to tell the kids, but he was leaving this time. I said, no, we need to tell the kids this time. And that was kind of a catalyst in that moment. I still remember it was on a Saturday in August. And I remember it like yesterday. I literally do. And he told our son, our daughter was asleep. Son dropped to the floor, kind of like, no. And he literally left. He took like 5-10 minutes, told, gone. And there I'm there left. So initially, my mum obviously passed away the year before. So my dad came around initially and we started going through the finances. Didn't realize the extent of it at that point, because again, being a single mom, I was working very part-time as a podiatrist, running a clinic on a Friday. So I knew money was going to be really, really tight. But at that point, I even remember saying to my dad, he won't shirk responsibility. And I know he'll put the children first. I have no worries about any of that. I remember saying all of these things. I mean, God, how wrong could you be? But anyway, at the time I thought that. And then once my dad had gone, I called my friend and she came round. And to be fair, in that moment, she was really, really great. She was exactly what I needed in that moment. I needed not to be on my own. And I actually remember going out to kind of a get together at our local community centre that afternoon. I was in a real daze, to be honest. I was in a freeze response. I was so dissociated. I can kind of remember it. But as I remember it, it's almost like I'm looking down at myself as I was going through the motions with all of that. I mean, again, God knows what my children thought at that time as well. And again, there's, I'm not shaming my younger self as that adult at that moment. I was doing the best that I could at the end of the day. But as time progressed, I knew then I needed, and my children actually hadn't been in any childcare to that point. And at that particular stage, they were 6 and not quite 3. But I knew I still had to work on the Friday and need to keep that clinic. And often I would work normally school hours, but I knew I would need to work till 6 o'clock. Now I needed to, do as many hours on that day as I could, obviously to earn cash because I needed money to live, pay the bills. I remember talking to my friend about this and just saying, would she be able to look after my children on a Friday after school, went to the same school as hers. I would pay her, X amount of money. I looked at the going rate for kind of childcare and I said, because them, because again, being a codependent, I was like, oh my God, I have to put my children into childcare. I really didn't want to do it, but obviously needs must. So she agreed, and that kind of helped me. I was doing sort of home visits for people, but then all this other stuff was coming out about my ex-husband. I found out he was obviously having an affair at the time as well. One of plenty of affairs that I probably still don't even know the half of them either. Had my house repossessed, money coming in wasn't equal the money going out. So it was really, really stressful at the time too. When I was doing some of my patients started to say things to me like, please stop telling. I mean, I'm going to call her Sarah. I always seem to go to a Sarah whenever I say anything. Sarah and John. So let's say she's called Sarah. So I actually start to have some of my patients, and even I remember one particular patient who I got on really, really well with called me up. She actually called me up and said, will you please stop telling Sarah things about your relationship, because she's going around telling everybody. Now, again, bear in mind, I was going through my own healing process. So I was kind of listening, but not taking it on board. But there was a catalyst for me. And I can't really even remember exactly how long into it. I think it was maybe about 18 months after I'd split up from my ex-husband, actually, as well. And there's two occasions. The first one was when I was actually started to see a psychotherapist at the time. And I remember her saying to me, because I said I was exhausted. And I remember her saying to me, you need to stop doing things for other people. Now, at the particular time, this Sarah, so she was looking after my two children on a Friday after school, giving them tea, and I was paying her for that per month. Yet every single month, I was also looking after her two children because she actually started a business on the back of an idea I had for her as well, bizarrely. The entrepreneur spirit in me has always been there. Of a business idea that I had, I created this thing called Pedipod parties, where again, to earn some extra money, this is when I was still with my ex-husband. As a podiatrist, I would get 6 to 8 people together. I would do this like pedicure on them as well. So they'd have a little foot bath, exfoliation, and then I'd do a podiatry treatment, and then I'd paint their nails. And I charged, sort of like 15, 20 pounds, something like that. And I'd earn 100 pounds for the evening or something like that. But again, it was extra cash coming in, and I was trying to be innovative. But again, when the kids were in bed, I was always thinking of these things. And if my husband was at home at the time, I was so codependent. I didn't ever like leaving my children, like genuinely, I didn't. And so I created this, but I remember saying to her one time I was going to give these up, and she said, oh, years ago, I used to do beauty. So she came on board, and I carried on doing the podiatry, and she then did the pedicure element of it. So I did the medical side. She did the beauty and side of it too. So she was actually now starting to get quite a thriving business on the back of it. But a lot of her clients that she was seeing were then coming to me also and saying, please stop telling Sarah everything. Because, but again, you know what it's like if you're going through stuff, especially with narcissistic abuse, we've kind of got verbal diarrhea. We keep talking about it, don't we? And of course, I was doing that, but I was sharing how low I was feeling, all of these things, really deep, personal, vulnerable things that I shared with her. But it was on this one particular occasion. I remember one time when I was seeing my psychotherapist, and she was saying to me, you need to stop doing things for everybody else, because I was actually ending up looking after her children probably 3 times as much as she was actually looking after mine, yet I was paying her. But at the time, I didn't see anything wrong in that. Again, highly codependent. My therapist at the time said, you need to stop doing anything for anybody else. You need to just focus on you. So I didn't feel too bad at the time going to her and telling her this, because I knew I was still paying her. But I did say, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to be able to look after your children just for the foreseeable future. I just need to focus on me and really start to heal myself. And when somebody's like, yeah, okay, then, they're kind of telling you it's okay, but in quite a passive aggressive way. There's this real underlying current of, who do you think you are? You should be doing things for me. And of course, ever the codependent, I was justifying, I was apologizing, all of these things, but I did stop having them. I remember it was probably about 3 months later. She must have been desperate, and she asked me again. And I remember thinking, well, okay, it was a Saturday morning. I thought, okay, I can, I was feeling okay on that day. And I said, yeah, that's fine. And I remember, no word of a lie, I remember I go, you went so selfish for a time, and you'll never guess what I said back. Well, you probably will. I said, I know, I'm really, really sorry. So I'm apologizing for everything I've been through and focusing on my healing. I mean, we can all look back in hindsight, but it shows really the state of mind that I was in, and that trauma response. It was about pleasing everybody else, even in my own healing. And maybe you can relate to that as well. So anyway, as time was progressing, I was still getting lots more people saying to me, she's talking about you. And basically what I was finding out was that she was telling people that I wasn't able to survive without her, that she was doing this, that, and everything else for me. So the response, obviously, of the people that she was telling, or the ones that weren't telling me this, were, of course, things like, oh, you're such a great friend. You're so good at all of this, Sarah. How lucky is she to have a friend like you? Now, I didn't see any of this through the trauma lens that of course I now do. But the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, was when eventually I remember telling her something, and I hadn't told a single soul. It was about a new partner that I had met and some of the concerns and worries that I had with his ex-wife, his children, and the worry that that was bringing to me. And I remember one time my ex-husband being at the door and him saying some of this stuff to me. And I remember thinking, I've only told one other person. I haven't told anybody else. So I immediately go into this trauma response of feeling everything around trust. To be fair, it brought lots of stuff up, obviously, about my ex. It brought lots of stuff up about friendships. And I remember I almost went back to being this inner child. I remember literally constructing this moment. We were in a group of 4, remember? And I remember sending the 3 of them a text, basically saying, I'm taking a step back from this friendship group. Please don't try and contact me. I need to focus on myself right now. But things have come to light and I need to take a step back. So I didn't go in there and go, hey, Sarah did this or anything else, because my fear was that I didn't want them to think badly of me, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. And I didn't want to call Sarah out on it because, again, there was still that fear. So, of course, within about half an hour, Sarah must have read this and she came knocking on my door. And I remember, and again, I'm pretty ashamed of this. Me and my children were in the house. And I remember saying, kids, hide. And I can picture it now. The 3 of us were hiding by the settee so she couldn't see in front of my front door. And again, I look back and I think, gosh, Caroline, I mean, this just highlights the state of mind I was in from the trauma at the time. It really, really does. Because I would never do that now. I would actually have a conversation with somebody and I'd call them out on it, but stay very calm and very, very present. But I didn't do that at the time because I wasn't in that state, because I hadn't done my somatic healing at the time to be able to do that. Anyway, she kept messaging and everything else. And eventually I was avoiding her. I'm literally in a flight response, dodging her wherever I went. I didn't want to speak to her. But what I realized then, as I was starting to go through my healing journey, was not only was my ex-husband a covert narcissist, but she was as well. And the reason, and one of the things was I got quite upset in a way that the other 2 didn't contact me either. Now, one of them still hasn't ever contacted me. The other one, we are in contact now. They can see what she is like now too, as well. But at the time, I felt really, really hurt why they couldn't see that. And I think this is a really good point to remember about flying monkeys too. When you think about a narcissist, okay, and you can think about this, narcissists are bullies. Think about this in the school playground. Think about this as a narcissist as an adult too. How do we behave towards bullies if we're carrying our own trauma, our own wounds too? Well, one, we will either believe what they're saying because it's safer to believe, okay, or we actually know that they are lying, but because we know how bullying and abusive they can be, we ignore the other person and we stay loyal to the actual abuser, the bully, the narcissist, for fear of how they will treat us. And I can see all of that now. And I don't judge those 2 women who did that at all. I get it. I really understand it, because I get, if I'm friends with the bully, if I'm friends with an abuser, then they're not going to abuse me. It's going to go on to somebody else. And I do understand all of that. However, it really, really hurt me at the time. And of course, now I've done, so much healing myself, I can see the dynamics of all of this. But I really want to share that with you in case you feel like somebody may know what the narcissist in your life is like, yet they seem to be taking their side. it's probably coming from a place of fear for them as well. Okay. And remember, narcissists are great liars as well. They can spin a tale and make it sound like it could be your fault too. And you know that because you were in a relationship with them as well. So I want you to be really mindful of these things and know that it really, really isn't your fault at all. So I wanted to share this with you about, often I talk about relationships from a narcissist or parents, but I wanted to do this podcast about friendships too, because as you start to realize about narcissism, I call it a friends cleanse. You start to shed friends. And then going back to this week being in, as you're listening to this, I'll be at my high performance healing mastermind and I run. And it took me a long time to start to think about, always wanted to run a female mastermind. I love female connection. I absolutely love it. But there was always that fear around female friendships and trust. And I started my mastermind last year. Obviously, you guys all know what I do with the healing process and everything, and I teach on my certifications too. But masterminding is something different. It's a really personal journey that you have within a group and that facilitation of it too. And I was really nervous about holding space for all of that too. And it felt right last year. And I've just literally filled my next mastermind as well. It's 12 months. But this is the final one of this mastermind I've just done. And we're going on this retreat. And I've got some amazing things planned. We've got a welcome party. We've got a boat ride. We're doing the fastest zip wire in the world. We're meeting an amazing multimillionaire entrepreneur who owns the whole of Zip World, Sean, who I'm really looking forward to meeting again. I've met him before. We've got a whole internal family systems morning where we're going to be visually putting our parts into a frame so that we can see what protector parts we have. We're going to be doing hot seating. We've got connection stuff. We've got some fun stuff planned as well. We're going to do cold water swimming because we're literally on a private beach, yoga, all of these things. I've got a private chef coming in for the week. We're going out for a few lovely meals as well. So there's tons planned. We're only there Monday to Friday, but I've got a lot planned. And a lot of that is around safety and connection and healing in a female friendship environment as well. Because I know some of the others have felt the same around this too. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. But I want you to start to understand from a friendship perspective. Remember, people only act in a certain way when they are coming from their own wounds. And if we're not continuing to work on our own healing, whenever we see someone else's behavior, if it's something maybe not nice, we're always going to see that as a reflection of us. When you start to do that deep work, the somatic work, and this is why I love bringing in internal family systems into the work I do, somatic experiencing, all of these key somatic healing therapies that we can bring in together, you can really start to see if someone behaves in a certain way, it's never a reflection of you. And that is a huge part of your healing because, one of the key things that I teach and we work on a lot in my mastermind and in my certifications and programs is relationships. And that isn't just romantic relationships. It's relationships with friends, with other family members. How do you, if you're in a workplace and you've got a narcissist there, how do you work with that? So there's lots of different dynamics. So you can have the best, most thriving, flourishing relationships you can, even if you have got toxic, narcissistic people around you as well. So I wanted to share this around friendships. I wanted to share my story around all of this too, because when I look back to how I was in all of that, I was so coming from a place of wounds. I was so coming from a place of a trauma response. And now it would be very, very different. Last year, for instance, I had conversations with two friends that I knew as well who were gossiping about others and also about myself, so that in a circle, they felt that they belonged. I don't want to be part of circles of friendship groups like that. And I certainly had a conversation with one of those and I distanced myself from the other two. I don't want to be around female friendships like that. It's not my style and I don't want to do that. I have a very, very strong boundary around that too. I don't want to be in a group of female friendships that are tearing down others, gossiping about others, or trying to say things to others to make them feel better by tearing others down and denigrating others. That's not acceptable in my world. However, the two involved last year that were with that, I send them so much love and compassion and self energy too. And my hope is maybe what they went through with me and me holding my boundaries at some stage will make them look inwardly at maybe why I behaved like that and why maybe they showed up like that too, in the hope that maybe one day we can have a conversation, an adult to adult to adult conversation, not a part to part to adult conversation as well. So that would be my wish and my hope, potentially one day as well. So friendships can be hard to navigate when we are holding narcissistic abuse, because, we can put so much pressure on friendships to behave in a certain way. We can put so much pressure on how we want them to behave in our relationships as well. So there's many different layers and dynamics to all of this, but I hope maybe this podcast will get you to get curious. And again, come and follow me on Instagram. Come and join my free Facebook group, Narcissistic Abuse and Trauma Recovery for Women. Remember, it's got the trauma bit in. There is another one without the trauma. That's not mine. Come and join the Narcissistic Abuse and Trauma Recovery for Women. We check every single profile. We have a team that checks. It's a safe and secure group. Make sure you come over and follow me on Instagram as well. I post reels and TikToks. Come and follow me on TikTok, please. Say hello on TikTok. Please do. I'm really trying to build on there. And I'm still not mastering it. So please come and do that and help me out on there as well. So take care, everybody. As always, I know for us getting to know each other, it's not the ideal scenario because of narcissistic abuse, but I really hope you enjoy the podcast. I really hope that they are, really get you to start to get curious and start to think about all of these things yourself, because you really can heal from trauma. It doesn't have to be a life sentence, but it's always an ongoing journey, because we're human beings. There's always going to be things that are going to crop up for us as well. So take care, my friends. Lots of love to you, and I will see you on the next episode.